Um, Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us, the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation and the National Farmers Federation, for our Adapting to webinar series. My name is Catherine McGuffick, and I'm the project lead for the Drought Resilience Leaders Program, funded by the Future Drought Fund. I'd like to start today by acknowledging that we're all meeting on different lands across Australia. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands on which we meet, work and live, and recognise that our land always has been and always will be Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander land. We pay our respects today to the elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge the connection to land and the environmental stewardship that our Indigenous people have shown over thousands of years for our precious land, and acknowledge the communities that are sharing that knowledge with us as we move forward together. The ARLF, as I said, we're really proud to bring you this webinar series as part of the Future Drought Fund's Drought Resilience Leaders Program. We work in partnership with the National Farmers Federation to bring the part of the Leaders Program to life, the Drought Resilience Mentoring Program, and they've also been central to us bringing you today's webinar. Today's webinar, it's the fifth in our series. We work very closely as an organisation with a number of partners. We work with the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal, FRRR, the Rural Economy Centre of Excellence, the Australian Resilience Centre and the University of Southern Queensland. So the program and the webinar series is truly a collaboration of organisations who are passionate about supporting a thriving rural and regional Australia. Thanks for everyone for joining us today. We've got a fabulous panel of women who are coming together today to talk about health and wellbeing from a personal and community focus. I've been lucky to be involved in some of the conversations as part of the Drought Resilience Leaders Development Program recently, and certainly resilience from a personal and community perspective has been really core to some of the conversations in those programs. So I think today's really timely and really relevant for all of the different experiences that people across rural and regional Australia are having as we speak. A little bit of housekeeping to start. We'd love you to introduce yourself using the chat. Let us know where you're zooming in from today, who you are, and please say hello in the chat box. If you've got any questions during the session, please pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do our best to save some time at the end so that you can ask some questions of our panellists. So please submit those as we go through. As I said, we've got a fabulous panel of women for you today, and they're going to be facilitated and guided through the conversation by our facilitator, Caitlin Vayro, and she's going to be the person leading the conversation for us today. So Caitlin's really passionate about rural health, which makes her perfect to lead today's conversation. She's completed a PhD in 2019 exploring the barriers and facilitators of mental health help seeking amongst Australian farmers. Since then, she's worked in higher education, not-for-profit and government sectors, as well as taking on really strong volunteering role around rural health and suicide prevention. And I'll let her talk a little bit about that. Caitlin also is a very strong believer that research should be used. So in addition to academic journal articles, she shared her research with groups such as the Queensland Royal Flying Doctors Service and through her role as an Evoke Ag Future Young Leader 2020. She's also a mentor with the Drought Resilience Leaders Mentor Program and has really spends time advocating for evidence-based strategies to promote health and wellbeing. And on that note, we're really pleased for Caitlin to be with us today, and I'm going to hand over to Caitlin to introduce you to our panel members and drive the conversation. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm thrilled to facilitate this webinar on health and wellbeing with these wonderful panellists who all bring a wealth of knowledge and experience across the domains of health. So as mentioned, I'm Caitlin, so I'm based in Logan, which is Yugambeh land. And as I said, I'm a rural health researcher and particularly around farmer mental health. So similarly, I will introduce Stephanie, who is a clinical psychologist, a mixed enterprise sheep and crop farmer, and a mother to 3 young boys. And she was in 2020 awarded the South Australian AgriFutures Rural Women's Award, and as well as the 2021 Safe Work Augusta Zado Award for her project Act for Ag. So Steph and Act for Ag they're all about building the capacity and resilience of farmers, farming families, and rural communities, equipping them with easy to apply tools to navigate the rock and the hard place. And then moving on to Joy. Joy is a lifestyle fitness trainer and coach at Off the Track Training, as well as a sheep and cattle grazier and a mum of 4. So Joy makes fitness accessible to those in rural and remote areas, having virtual programs with printed materials that people can access anywhere. Joy is on a mission to change the perception of health and fitness for people living in rural Australia and boost the importance of prioritising their physical and mental health. And then Anna. Anna is all about community. She hails from Mungandai, which is a town that has experienced some really significant trauma, including losing several amenities when the town's main street was destroyed by fire. This spurred Anna on to coordinate relief and recovery efforts, including establishing a community store to provide basic groceries. Anna was awarded the Northern Tablelands Woman of the Year Award and also accepted into the National Farmers Federation Diversity in Agriculture Leadership Program for 2021. Anna now focuses on her family farm contracting business, Harrison Farming, as well as a community coffee shop in Mungandai called Flock. So with that, I would like to ask my first question, which is for Steph, to tell me a little bit about Act for Ag.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. And hi, everyone. It's very exciting to be here. So Act for Ag, I guess, started combined with my knowledge as a psychologist and working rurally as a psychologist, but also very much informed by my life on farm and really that lived experience understanding the pressures that we face and the challenges that it is really hard to get to in person. Mental health services often across the country. And what my hope is with Act for Ag is to build those skills from the ground up so that we can all have skills to manage both the everyday pressures, but also the big challenges and crisis that can hit us at times, and have the skills to adapt and do what matters most to us, even during those tough times. So it's all about just building capacity, little steps each day, knowing that we go off track at times, but that we can come back on track when needed as well.
Brilliant. It's the adaptability is, important, and I love that it is so inclusive of that. So Joy, I'll throw over to you, and I'd love to hear a little bit, similarly, about Off the Track Training, your core messages, your why and your how.
Oh, big question. Hi, everybody. So I'm not in my natural habitat. I'm actually at the Sunshine Coast presenting to a pastoral company who has health and wellness on the top of their agenda at their managers conference. So it actually is a great tribute to how important health and wellbeing has become for people involved in agriculture and rural communities, because it's actually appearing on the agenda today in a webinar and also on lots of other events. So the importance of it is not brushed over. Off the Track Training started well before, I believe, health and wellness featured in rural Australia, especially on agricultural properties. I can remember very vividly feeling very uncomfortable exercising on our family property, and felt guilty that I was prioritising something that wasn't associated with checking waters, fences, stock cattle, or doing the books or cooking or whatever the role might have been as the typical rural Australian family. So that guilt, I think, still appears today. And it's something that I'm actually focused on supporting rural Australia with Off the Track Training, because it's not that we don't want to. It's not that we don't know how important our health and wellness is. It's our mindset around how we make this happen in our lives that we lead, and how we can actually develop a new set of rules for our own ability to prioritize it amongst the busyness of our lives. Now, off the track training is about supporting people and giving them every tool that they need in order to make that happen, whether it be written programs, whether it be videos, whether it be coaching calls, whether it be just a group of people to help it bump up the list of the priorities. So that's where it's at. And that's exactly what I've been talking to these managers about they struggle, and as does everyone, with actually making it happen on a daily basis without getting overloaded with the to-do list and feeling like you have to work from dawn till dusk, serve everybody and everything else except for yourself. And we all know how important it is to look after ourselves. But what does that look like, and how do we make that happen in our daily lives is critical. And off the track training tries to bridge that gap and give people tools, support, resources that can help them do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I love how you've emphasized the importance of those mindset and priorities. So, if you can touch on that, Anna, I'll throw over to you. You were the president of the Mungandai Progress Association and are a strong advocate for your community, especially in times of hardship. Can you tell me about how health and wellbeing fits into that, especially given the drought and the fire that did destroy the main street?
Yeah, Caitlin, I think I could literally talk about this for hours, because I just think health and wellbeing shapes your whole community. It doesn't matter where you live. And so one thing I think that we know from times like that is that every human will endure some kind of hardship in their life, some a few times. If you live in Mungandai, probably more than others. So I think what we need to focus on is how do we prepare ourselves for when this time comes? So we lost our only supermarket, our only butcher shop, and our only dress shop, which did sell workwear for the blokes, so they were disappointed as well. We lost the heart of our community. So we basically just lost the soul in the main street. We lost that, it's that Saturday incidental meeting place for locals. You know, that opportunity when you bump into someone and you say, oh, great to see you. Hope you're well. How's your hubby? How's family? You know, all those conversations we lost overnight because we had nowhere for people to go. There was just the meeting place had gone. And so I think now looking at it, our community is still recovering from the fire. We're slowly mending. I think from the fire, we were coming straight out of a drought. So it was pretty difficult times for our community. The hospital at that stage, because of the border closures, the Queensland side, the hospital is Queensland Health. It was closed off to us as New South Wales residents, and it couldn't operate because it was 80% staffed by New South Wales people. So we had these huge things, you know, I think the community just sort of felt like fragile and scared. We were also closed off to Moree at the time as it was a hotspot. So I think we just felt really vulnerable, and it really made us realise like what an amazing service we have here in our country town, and how important we would always talk about our border situation and how unique it was that we had, you know, facilities on both sides. But it was really at this point when we literally got cut in half that we realised how much we depended on our hospital, and rightly so. It's like right here. When I reflect back on that time of hardship, I think the one thing that the community kept was their sense of humour. And I think that's really important. And even during the drought, how much we laughed, shared stories, went to the pub, had a few lemonades, all those things. We were hurting so badly inside, and the constant thought and worry about the next pay or when we'll be able to plant that next crop, it was pretty terrifying. But I think when we gathered together, all the troubles and everything that we had going on just felt really distant. So when I look back at, you know, talking about survival in tough times, I believe that people need to lean on people, and that's where we need to build really strong communities. So we have that network when things go down. You know, they say the worst thing about the small town is everyone knows your business, but the best thing about the small town is you know everyone's business. It puts you in a really unique position. You know when someone's doing it tough. You know when someone's lost their husband, their child, their job, their pet. We know everyone's lives. We know where they live. we have the ability to show kindness in these times. I think we just need to take the time out in our own lives and just reach out to them, write the letter, pick the flower, buy the box of chocolates, whatever it may be. Just be a good community member and have each other's backs, because when the times get tough, I think it's, really, you do need each other.
Absolutely. The importance of that community connection is vital. So I'll continue on then. So you, with a group of friends, developed Flock. So can you tell me about that and how that's impacted the community?
Probably shouldn't have had the champagnes that we thought it was a good idea at the time, but that's life. It was born out of 5 busy farming women. I think I grabbed like the 5 busiest women in our community and said, hey, who's got spare time for a coffee shop? But we wanted to bring a broken community back together. We just saw that the devastation of the fire and still recovering from the drought, the opportunity arose to purchase the coffee shop. And so we just took it. It was something that I wanted to do alone. But then due to other work commitments and a pretty full schedule, I decided that if I'm going to jump on a sinking ship, that I'm going to grab my mates and go and bring them with me. So, we took it on because, opening a coffee shop during a pandemic and flooding and border closures, anyway, it just, but after almost a year of trading, we had a delayed start because of flooding. But I can happily look back at what we've achieved. It's amazing. It's a welcoming, a happy place to enjoy the best bacon egg roll, perfectly brewed barista coffee if you're coming through Bungendike. And it's a place where people can meet, sit for hours, or just accidentally bump into a friend. This morning, I actually literally just left the grill to get here. And we just had a sick team member, so I just had to jump in. And while I was cooking in the kitchen and thinking about all the other things that I had going on that I should be doing, I could hear all the blokes banter, the country banter, and the women were laughing, and it just made me so happy. I was sitting there in that moment, cooking my bacon and egg rolls, just thinking, this is why we've made a positive impact on the community. We've just provided the venue, and the locals love it and keep coming back, and we love them being there. And it's really rewarding to see a full coffee shop of mums and babies, and the Tai Chi ladies come after their Tai Chi. And, it's just nice to have that spot where people can meet.
It sounds fabulous, and I'm totally down for a bacon and egg roll. So what I'd like to ask next is, I'd love to know what you think the biggest challenges that you see rural people face when it comes to health and wellbeing. So I'll throw that one to you, Steph.
Well, it's a very big question. And I think there's a huge amount there. I think particularly in rural areas, there is just the challenge of distance, that it's not as easy to pop into the gym, or we have the extra pressures of distance. And then particularly for people on farm, that there are those challenges of just extra time demands and the uncertainty as well. But and this is only coming into my mind now as I talk about it, but I sometimes wonder, like what Joy was saying, is one of the biggest challenges how stuck we get on the stereotypes of we're tough, we're busy, we don't have time for any of this, when actually if we unhooked from all of that, then we could make it a priority. And I think unhooking from that idea that looking after our health and well-being is so tough in rural areas, when actually we have access to nature that people in city areas don't have. We have so many amazing things at our fingertips. So I've probably just gone off on a big tangent, but I kind of think that we've got so many benefits that sometimes we need to shine a light on them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joy, I'd love you to kind of add, if there's anything you'd like to add, please feel free.
Well, I think that's the one thing that is actually stopping people from taking action with their health, is giving themselves permission to do it. You don't need permission from anyone to take action to improve your health and wellness. And you can think of all of the can'ts and the impossibilities and the barriers and all those things as much as you like. There are myriads of them wherever you turn. And I've heard them all. And I even go through in my mind some of those barriers every day. It can be too hot or too cold. There are too many flies. The kids are there. The husband's not. Like, there's so many situations. We have to just decide who we're going to be now and in 20 years' time. And it takes a level of responsibility for ourselves to know that we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take that responsibility. As much as you can support people, you can lead a horse to water, you cannot make it drink. That has to come from within you. And you need to give yourself permission to believe in how important you are, your self-worth, your self-health. And where, you want motivation. Motivation comes from within you. You've got to see it and believe in it. So I hope that adds to what Steph was saying.
Yeah, and I want to now flip that on its head a little bit. So, all of our panelists, they wear so many hats within their communities. So, Joy, I'll start with you. What do you do to look after your own health and well-being? And for those on the webinar, please do feel free to also add what you do into the chat.
Or maybe what they want to do if they're not doing anything. What's the dream? Because you got to chase those dreams. How do you want to be? I do lots of different stuff. I have fun in the landscape I live in. That's important to me. It's important to me to not need anything. I don't need to be doing it a certain time. I have a philosophy that fits for me and it may not fit for you. I am flexible but committed. So I don't lock myself into having to do it at certain times if that doesn't work. There's one thing about rural Australia, and that is that there are so many uncontrollables. Sometimes you don't know how your day is going to roll, and you've got to be flexible but committed to the important big rocks, and that's absolutely vital. You can't predict the rain, you can't predict the weather. You've got kids, you've got business, roll with the punches, be flexible but committed, and know what fits with your life. That is so important for me. I like to do the things that merge with my lifestyle. And that's where a lot of people get really stuck. They're trying to do square peg, round hole. They're trying to make this habit fit in a lifestyle that it doesn't work. And it's so important that we find our own routine that works for our time frame, our lives, our responsibilities, and allocate that time for ourselves in health and fitness. So, getting up early for me and exercising first thing in the morning before anything else is happening, before I get swallowed up by the to-do list, is absolutely my number one. But if I don't get up early and I know that I want to exercise that day, then I've got to be prepared for the consequences, which is 8 o'clock at night. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. I don't always want to do it. Actually, there's days I definitely don't want to do it, but I know I am better for it. I know that as soon as no one ever regrets exercising, no one. They don't go, oh crap, I wish I'd never done that. They never say that. After a workout, you are always like the level of self-belief and self-worth that carries on to your everyday so that you can serve others, serve your business, serve your community. Everybody needs to allocate some time to fill their own cup. And exercise, movement is medicine, food is medicine. And we can only ever problem solve, move an emotion or a mood with movement. Like, movement is the number one thing. So blubbering in a corner, rocking back and forth is never going to shift an emotion or a mood. It's movement. And that's really important for everybody in rural Australia to acknowledge.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing in the chat some people saying they go for walks with kids, and that is excellent because you are actually also demonstrating to them how to continue with that movement. So that's fabulous. So Anna, I'll throw over to you now. What do you do to look after your health and well-being?
Well, I think Joy kind of ruined my excuses quite some years ago when I kept saying to my husband when we were on our property that there's no gym out here, I can't possibly exercise. The road's too rocky, the flies, all the excuses she literally named was me. And he said, no, there's this woman on Instagram with tires, like, you're fine. You've got all the tools. And I was like, oh, so I can 100%, I've been on that side. I just wish we had that feeling, the post-exercise feeling pre-workout to get the motivation. I just think it should be swapped around. I would love that if someone can innovate a little idea there where we can just get that endorphins before, but 100%, you can't beat those busy walks. But I actually feel in those times when I was under the pump in the community and the pressure on me from when I literally woke to phone calls to going to bed, I had lost my time to exercise. That's not an excuse. It's just the reality of the time that I was in. It was so full on and the demands were so full on me. And I just decided that if I was in Moree for work, I would go and get a massage after work before I got back in the car and back on the phone and back to the craziness of what was going on here. And that was my stress reset. So I was like, the busiest I am, basically the less spare time I had, the more time I made to get a massage, because that was just the number one thing for me to keep and it really did get me through that challenging time. I probably haven't had one since last year. I'm in a better place with my work-life balance this year. This has probably spurred me on to book in again. The bonus is you can let it all out to the massage therapist. So it doubles as physical and mental health in one. It's wicked. Just like getting your hair done, let it all out. It's the perfect reboot, but my morning walks with my dog are really important. One of my little Australian Terriers has just gone blind. So sadly, I'm leaving her behind, but I still have another dog that's Border Collie that's very keen to what is my husband? He says, oh, did the dog take you for a walk again today? I was like, yes, the dog did take me for a walk. So yeah, you can't beat that. You're just getting out and it's the fresh air. I think I've got a treadmill here, but sometimes it's just that fresh air. It just cleans your head out. It's great.
Brilliant. And Steph, do you have anything to add about what you do to look after your own physical and mental health?
Yeah, I could listen to Joy and Anna all day for motivation. I think for me, it is a continued work in progress, and I guess a little bit of honesty and transparency. Even though I talk to people and help people with this constantly, it's still something that I really struggle to put in place because, yeah, the juggle of young kids and a really busy farm. And for me, it's probably been a big mindset shift. Harvest last year, I finally got to drive the header and fill up a field bin myself. And it kind of was that actual act of filling up a bin and translating that filling your cup idea. And I realized that if I do not fill my bin, I've got nothing to give to anyone else. And so it really has been a shift in recognizing and that giving myself permission, like Joy was speaking about, that, yeah, when my kids are at daycare, I do not need to work from every single one of those minutes. If I stop and do some yoga for half an hour, that is just as valuable as the work I need to do. Or if my kids say, hey, mum, come and kick the footy with me, that's okay. That's actually amazing to go and do that. So I think for me, it's been letting go of setting myself, right, I'm going to go for half an hour of exercise and do all of this and setting my goals too high, and just really bringing it back. And if I do 2 minutes of yoga, awesome. If I get outside and go for a walk with the kids, awesome. If I don't get it done one day, that's okay as well. And just kind of meeting myself with kindness and starting again the next day. So it's, and probably, I guess, most recently as a professional juggler and yes sayer, I have actually started saying no and really checking in on, does this serve me and does this fit with what I need to be doing? And so going, no, as much as this is a great opportunity, actually, no, this doesn't fit, and Steph, you can't do it all, which then opens up time to then do some of that stuff that really matters as well. So yeah, I'm a work in progress, but we'll get there.
Thank you for your vulnerability, because people, we all do struggle. I know I don't like getting up early. We had floods come through my region, and that's brought midges, which mean walking outside at the moment isn't feasible. They attack me and I blister. So it's for me personally, I also like to, make it a priority, but be flexible, as, Joy mentioned previously. If I can't go for a walk, is there, an online resource I can draw upon? Yoga, Pilates, boxing, whatever it may be, having those backups I found is really beneficial. But, it sounds like a lot of the focus as well, Steph, was on mindset. And so, it's common in rural areas that most people are very work focused, whether it's working from dusk till dawn or later, out ploughing, shearing, whatever it may be. So I'd love to know, how do you encourage a mindset that there is time for exercise and rest as well as work?
I think it's about learning that our mind is this amazing storyteller, and it's going to tell us stories. It's going to fill us up with a whole lot of thoughts, basically to make sense of what's happened in the past and plan for what's going to happen in the future. But it generally has a pretty negative push on what it's going to do. And as much as there's often a big push around just think positive or just replace your mindset, it's not quite as easy as that, because our mind's just going to keep doing what it does. But one of the approach why Act for Ag is called Act for Ag, it's an approach called acceptance and commitment therapy. And it is basically about learning to start being flexible with our thoughts and feelings, and knowing that actually, even if our mind tells us, no, I don't want to do that, or no, I'm too tired, we don't have to listen to our thoughts as gospel. We don't have to listen to them as the truth. And actually, even if our thoughts are true, are they actually helpful or not? So just getting a bit of flexibility from our thoughts. And for me particularly, I find that's incredibly helpful on the farm. And in farming, it's like we're managing relationships, we're managing family, we're managing business, we're managing so many things together. And throw in drought or stress or long hours, we can start getting really rigid in our thinking. And particularly, like I look at in our relationships, and something happens and your mind goes straight to, oh, my husband never does this, or this never happens, like go straight into the black and white thinking. But learning to kind of just notice those thoughts and go, oh, here's the thought of it's all on me, or here's the thought of I'm too tired, or here's the thought of this is all too hard. And instead of getting really kind of caught up on that thought, when we just notice it, you can kind of go, oh, yeah, here's a thought. Am I going to choose to buy into that? Or do I choose, actually, not, that's not serving me right now, and I'm going to do what actually fits with me, what serves me. Like, I got home really late last night after a presentation, and my husband's sitting there after being on a farm clearing sales auction, and the dishes are still not done. And I'm like, what have you been doing? And then, because I'd actually been talking to people about all of this, I could kind of step back and unhook from that resentment, or unhook from all of that. And we had a chat about how our days were. We had a chat while I did the dishes, and at the end of it, our relationship was still strong. We had a chance to debrief about the day. Whereas if I'd got really caught in those stories, it would have ended up completely different. So again, I'm good at going off on tangents, but I think it's, just practicing unhooking from that tricky stuff.
Joy, I'll follow up that with, so, I guess applying that to the people that you work with, can you explain, I guess how you encourage them to make that time for exercise and rest as well as their work?
It's interesting. That's exactly what I've been talking to these guys about in the managers conference this morning. So it's fresh in my mind. First of all, we have to know why it's important to us. And we've talked about how critical that is, knowing why you want to even bother. What do you want out of this gig? What do you want to do fitness for? What do you want to get healthy and feel good for? What does it mean for you? The other thing is knowing where in your day it can happen and what you're willing to do, because there'll always be sacrifices. Yeah, there'll always be something that you won't be able to do because you want to or need to prioritize yourself. So, I could get up in the morning at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I could go into the office and work my little heart out before the kids get up, or I could wash the floor or wash up. I prioritize exercise above housework any day of the friggin' week. Put down the broom, step away, and go and do something for yourself. Don't get caught up on the dishes. That stuff doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And I mean, people say, oh, how do you have time? Well, I look at a dirty floor and I'm down there doing sit-ups and I just push it aside because it's not what matters. So I think it's about retraining your thinking, retraining your brain, and a bit like what Steph said, but I'm going to say it in a really uncouth way, calling bullshit on your thoughts and sharing them and getting somebody else to call bullshit on them is a really good strategy for me. So when I can see things are blocking me from progress, or I can see things that I'm not happy with, or I'm just unsettled, or I get a gut feeling that something's off, communicate it to those people around you that love and support you, husbands, family, friends. And they will often be able to see it from a different perspective. I often use this analogy with women that are mothers about the messages that they would give their child or their teenage daughter if they were doing exactly what they're doing. So if your teenage daughter was treating their body, having a thought about their body or having a thought about their time or health and wellness like you were, would that be okay? What advice would you give them? And it's very good to step outside yourself and have that helicopter view and call yourself out on things, because we have to have that perspective to see things for what they really are. And that gives us an opportunity to then say, well, actually, I do have a chance to do that here, to fit it in there. And I need permission. I need to give myself permission for that to be okay. And once you get that, then the getting up and putting your sneakers on, that's just about commitment and discipline. The doing is just about building the chain, I call it. Every link on the chain makes that chain stronger to pull you through the tough times. Build the chain. Don't break the friggin' chain is the story. Don't break the chain. Build the chain. Everything you do is a link, and it builds you to be stronger to pull through the tough times that are inevitable. But that is called living. So, there is definitely going to be tough times again. We are definitely going to have to overcome them. It's an inevitable. How you come through them all depends on how well you look after your mind and body. That's the one thing we have control over.
Absolutely. And I want to pick up, so you mentioned the support of your friends and your family, and noting that we are all women here presenting today. Anna, I'd like to ask you, your perceptions on the role of women in health and well-being, and the tough question, is it healthy?
I think a lot gets put, and this is going to be a stereotypical conversation, but I think a lot of pressure gets put on our shoulders. Generally, we are the ones making the decision at the supermarket. We are the ones that are making the decision as to what to feed our family. We are the ones that are generally around with the kids can see. Not saying that husbands are not. This is totally just. I just think that those pressures and those decisions is where we need to be really strong and be good leaders, and likewise for the fathers. And I don't think that country people have that nailed yet. I think there's still that. I know in our area there is still a lot of smokers, and I think we still have these country things that they use, and I probably have, like the alcohol, and I'm by no means I'm a community member. I'm not a professional, by the way, so no one leave this with any kind of I think the things that we use to release pressure in the really tough times, the smoking, the drinking, the going out, we can say that resets our mind. Are there better things? 100%. Should we be starting sporting groups? Yes. We're most likely normally involved in that. Unfortunately, within our community, I hope it's not the same in others around regional Australia, but we've certainly seen a lot of clubs close from COVID. A lot of sporting groups around here have closed down, and then it's a matter of someone else picking them up, someone else to be the president, the treasurer, the secretary, someone to take on these jobs to keep that going. I think every town, it's so important that, and I've always sort of said this to people when they come to Mungo, oh, but we don't have this or we don't have that. And I go, well, do it. If you want Tai Chi in the park, start it. no one's going to say you don't know what you're talking about, because no one cares. No one knows. Like, so you can actually get away with doing whatever. If you want to run a fitness class in the hall and bring everyone in, you know, I was whinging one time about driving 120K one way to take my kids to cricket. So I started cricket in our town hall. The dads came, they loved it. It was like time out for the mums. It was just this brilliant little quick, easy. And it literally started because I didn't want to take my kids to Moree. Like, you know, and so I think we've just got to really harness those times. I've probably gone way off tangent. Sorry, Caitlin. I've done a step.
No, it's brilliant to hear. And it also gives examples of how you can make that change and make health, you know, activity easier for yourself and including the family. Brilliant. Love that. So, Steph, I will throw this one over to you then, the role of women in health and wellbeing and the health factors for women of that.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and one we kind of touched on at the start, reflecting that we have an all-female panel, which is, it is fantastic, but I think particularly, well, I don't think it's actually just a rural issue, but I think there is a bit of a catch in that health and wellbeing, and particularly around mental health, it has become quite gendered in rural areas, and there's a big push around men's mental health, which is fantastic, and we need to advocate and improve men's mental health. But we also need to look out for women. And I think it's actually coming back to, this is about people. This is about all of us, because what's actually happening is there's a real invisible burden, and particularly through COVID. But I think the many, many hats that women are wearing, and there's a lot of men wearing multiple hats as well. But I think there is a really strong push and this stereotype that women are the carers and women are the supporters. And so we put that pressure and guilt even more on ourselves, that we have to look out for everybody else. And so it's a really tricky one. And I don't think it's probably particularly healthy where the conversation is right now. And I think there does need to be a shift. And one of my things that I'd love to see more of is coming actually back to relationships, that the big driver about everybody's mental health is the relationship that we have with our husband or wife, the relationships that we have with our families on farm, or the relationships that we have in communities. And so really making that extended across everybody is something I would particularly like to see more of as well.
Brilliant. Thank you for those insights. So I'm going to ask another question, and it's interesting, given the focus of these webinars, that this term hasn't come up this week. So resilience is a big focus of the, Drought Leader Resilience Program. But in discussions I've had through my research, there was often this kind of confusion between resilience and Stoicism. So, if I'll throw it to you first, Steph, and then we'll go around. But I guess unpacking your experiences with this confusion.
I think it's such a good question. And I have a love-hate relationship with the term and have needed to come to embrace it, given all of the focus on resilience. But I think we do need to shift from that stereotype of resilient rural people who are tough and can manage all these crises that are thrown at us, to be able to say, actually, no, it's okay if you're not doing okay when you've been in drought for 3 years, or if your town's burnt down, or if that happens, you don't need to be resilient automatically, because none of us actually are just resilient automatically. I like to think of resilience as a set of skills, as capacities that we can all build, as muscles we can all build, that it's available to all of us, and they're things that we can learn and put in place. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it's not a you've got it or you don't situation. It's something that needs to be supported, and it's not just on the individual either. It really does need to be about the networks around them and the community, and building it on all levels as well.
Brilliant. And Anna, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, Caitlin, I think I've battled with the word resilience. It's a bit like the pivot word. I think we really did kind of probably overuse it during COVID. But I think with resilience, when it means to bounce back quickly. I am still recovering from what we went through in our community, that's not quick. That happened in September in 2020. So, you know, I think, yes, we were resilient at the time. Yes, we just sucked it up and we just did what we had to do to get that shop so we could actually supply basic amenities to our town. But was that difficult? Yes, that was really difficult. Was it hard? Yes. Was it, it put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. We basically, we like reached out to so many people within the community. Like, everyone was involved in this. We were unloading a truck at 11 o'clock at night and the kids pulled out of bed to help us unload trucks. Like, was that big on our family? Yeah, it was really big on our family. Was it, you know, I think you can act in a resilient way, but I don't think we can ignore the fact that once something's over, it's not necessarily over for people. Like, it does take time to recover from things. And I think that's okay. And we're allowed to, I think we can say that. I think we're in a good little world now where we can actually own that. You know, it was not good. I actually rang to get some help to speak to someone in Moree to get services at the time. I just needed to unload everything and I couldn't get an appointment. So I fixed myself by my massages and my walks. But honestly, like, it's like, that's tough. That's tough when we're reaching out and we can't get the help that we need. So, yeah, resilience. I'm not sure, Caitlin.
No, it's definitely a tough one. And, you know, I guess it's that process of continual reflection upon resilience and what it means, because it isn't about just grinning and bearing it and not saying anything. And unfortunately, there are struggles where, you know, it's not just simple to say, get an appointment, like you said, but in saying that, there's value in the step that you took to still do that and recognize the need for that, because that, again, is another skill in itself that can help with resilience, because getting support can be part of being a resilient person, getting support when there is that struggle to then be able to move forward in a way where you are actually well. So, Joy, throw this one now to you as well, and to discuss the Stoicism resilience.
100% support Anna and Steph. Go girls. It's absolutely, I agree, 100%. I can only really, I mean, resilience is hard to define apart from anybody else's perspective but your own. And so for me, I mean, it's really hard, isn't it? Because you have to have compassion for yourself and others. And you don't ever know what it's truly like walking in somebody else's shoes. And it'll be difficult for other people to understand what you're going through as well. So I think compassion is a big part of that. The tough times in a person's life, mine and whoever else's, I always come back to Oprah Winfrey's words. I always ask the question, what are you here to teach me? And she says that all the time, you know, when death comes, when disaster comes, what are you here to teach me? And that really helped me get through our 12 years of dry times on our property. And I now look back on that as, I'd love not to go back into it again, but it's going to happen. It's inevitable. However, what is it here to teach me? And what did that 12 years teach us? And I can honestly say that it was the best professional development we could ever ask for. It taught us how to communicate better. It provided us an opportunity to learn as much as we could, because we were challenged to remain financially viable, profitable, content. And it challenged us in ways that we would not have ever been challenged with had we have had a cruisy, times. My husband would kill me for saying that. However, he acknowledges too how much tough times teach you about what's important. And I'm sure every time I failed, there's always a lesson. It's just amazing how the universe teaches us about what's really important. Like Anna's experience there in Mungandai, look at the amazing stuff. I bet you she never thought she could run a coffee shop. Bet you that community has never been stronger. And the toughest times when we're at our darndest is when we can actually connect to the things that really matter. The things that really matter, not the 100 series wagon, not the holiday, what really matters. And I think that's what, to me, is the power of tough times. And maybe it adds to the resilience bank, because what it gives you is then perspective. And so when we go through times that aren't as tough, we have that perspective to say, I've been through this before. I trust myself. I know what really matters. And that's, I believe, is what is a true indication of possibly resilience, possibly grit, possibly just knowing your self-worth and what really matters in the world.
Brilliant. So thank you all for that. We're going to move over to the Q&A portion now. So I've seen there's definitely been a couple questions come through, and there's one that aligns with another question that I'd kind of thought up. So I'll start with that. So someone's written through, I'm interested in how we engage in the community more comprehensively. It's those who really feel isolated and are not able to source assistance. So Steph, maybe if you want to start with this one.
Yeah, big question. So my kind of take on what they're asking is kind of how to get those people who aren't necessarily engaging in the community engaged. I'd love actually to hear a bit from Anna on this one, because I think it sounds like their community is doing an amazing job, because I think it's something that needs to not necessarily be professional-led or service-led. Like somehow we need to facilitate the communities to create this ground-up approach, so that it feels like it's something that it's not just someone coming in and saying, hey, you should do this. It's developing something that is unique to the community, and knowing that sometimes these approaches have to be long-term, that there will be some people that leap in straight away, and then there's other people that kind of dip their toe in the water, and then they might pull back out, and then they'll kind of come back and forth. So I think there's a lot of potential to be done in really boosting and enabling community-led approaches.
So Anna, can you add on?
Yeah, definitely. So our community, we've got 30% Indigenous population and also elderly. So our population between, the 18 to 30-year-olds is our smallest. You wouldn't know it on a Friday night at the pub. It's the biggest population there. But generally in the town, that's our smallest demographic. So for the ones that are isolated, it's generally really our elderly that we are concerned about. The best thing that I think design in Mungundai was our home for the aged is literally beside my house right here, and it is in the middle of the main street. So that has been such a great asset for those people that would have felt really isolated in that transition. So they go from that care into the hospital for their last years. The care is so excellent at the hospital, they last a while there too. So I think that, it's easier in smaller communities. I remember having a conversation with my grandfather, who was brought up on a property at Surat, and he said you can feel lonelier in the city than you do in the middle of a property, in the middle of nowhere, with no neighbour around. And I absolutely get that. So I actually think that's where rural Australia is probably kicking goals. We know who everyone is around town. I think that helps. There's Meals on Wheels. We're delivering to people. We know their family. Even the most isolated people need to shop at the supermarket, and generally everyone knows their name too. So if that's the only person they're seeing that day, well, at least they can walk in and someone says hi to Gary. So I think that issue and that isolation is probably harder in the cities.
So this next question that's come through that is got a sort of similar theme, and it's asking if any of us have had a situation where you don't have a community or network or friends to work with or lean on because you've moved town, or that sort of thing, and how that was overcome.
I can go here again, but do you want? I can share.
Please do.
The number one thing I say to people when you're moving to town, join something, just join something, anything. Like it can be a sporting group, it can be a knitting group, it can be a whatever, but the network from that, from participating in something else, or just knowing someone down the street because you've joined that group, I think it's the easiest way into a community. And generally people are looking for people, especially if you're willing to put your hand up for a job. you know, and I think it's those groups. I've got a friend that's a cousin that's moving to Emerald, new job, and he goes, oh, how am I meant to meet people? Start something, like just go to touch, go to footy, go to whatever you're into, and within that group you'll develop your own community. So it's actually really easy. I think it's an easy one. Everyone's into something.
Yeah. Brilliant. So this next question is a combination of two, and Steph, I'll throw this one to you, and it is a pretty big one and quite timely. So it's asking about how to make sense and process the big stuff and keeping a positive mindset kind of in frame. And, you know, the examples were with Ukraine, climate change and the pandemic, and then droughts and floods as well. And then also, as part of that, when should people reach out to get support?
Such a big question. And I kind of think the whole world is struggling with this right now. And so I think starting with a place, like Joy said, of starting with kindness and compassion to yourself, to say, actually, it's okay to be exhausted right now. It's okay to feel overwhelmed with everything that's going on. It's okay if you're not springing out of bed and going, right, let's go 2022. That I kind of liken 2022 to the third year of drought, where each year you've gone, right, this year's going to be different, this year's going to be different, this year's going to be different, and it's not. It's really, really sucking at the moment. So actually recognizing that that's okay sometimes. And I think letting ourselves, one really powerful but tricky thing that we can learn to do is making space for difficult emotions. I think many of us grew up learning to distract ourselves. Like I still sometimes see it with grandparents. If a toddler's crying and they pick them up and go, here, look, there's a truck. Stop crying, there's a truck. That it's actually okay to be sad sometimes. It's okay, and to sit with those feelings, because if we give ourselves space to feel that stuff, then we can give it space to kind of move through, and then be able to sit back and go, okay, well, what can I do right now? And what's in my control? What's something that I can do to move towards what's important to me? And then I think coming to that second point of when to reach out, I think that's a really valuable thing, and a position I've been in personally. As much as we can know all of these tools and everything that we should be doing, I think it's knowing if you start to get to that place of really struggling to find that joy in every day, or that this is going on for more than a week or two at a time, and you just can't get past that point of going, actually, no, it is completely okay to reach out to your GP if you've got one. Reach out. There's a number of phone lines and that available. And even though it is often tough in rural areas to get support, there are options out there. And sometimes taking that first step, it might not be the right place initially, but that first step is the hardest. And if you're thinking, oh, maybe I need some help, then chances are you probably do. And then awesome, it's a step that you can reach out to someone and get some extra help.
Brilliant, thank you. And I want to thank you all for being so honest and vulnerable. Health and wellbeing can be a difficult topic at times, but it's been fabulous hearing from you all. I've really, really enjoyed it and really learnt a lot. So from that, I will throw back to, is it Catherine or Hayley?
Catherine. Thanks, Caitlin. That's fabulous. And thank you, Anna, Joy and Stephanie, for being really honest and frank and calling us on some things that I've been watching the chat come through. There's been some great conversations there, and we've all really appreciated your honesty and sort of frankness and vulnerability as well. So thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your experiences. Thank you everyone for joining us online today, and especially for those people who've been sharing their own personal experiences and their own kind of tips and tricks and contact details in the chat. That's been really great to see. So hopefully those of you who can take advantage of that, please take those people up on their offers. I'd also just very quickly, before we wrap up today, just like to remind you that we do have applications open at the moment for the Drought Resilience Leaders Mentoring Program. and also the Drought Resilience Leaders Development Program in Southwest Queensland, Catherine Barclay in the Greater Darwin region. As I said, Caitlin and a number of you today are part of the mentoring program, and I know that there are people from the Northern Territory and Southwest Queensland also listening today. We'd love for you to share the word about those programs and tap people on the shoulder to be part of that, and also to take that opportunity to share your experiences and your valuable learnings as well. So thank you everyone for joining today. We will have another webinar that will be around innovation and adaptation on the 21st of April. We would love for you to join us as well. The recording for today will be available through our YouTube channel. And again, just a huge thank you to Steph, Anna, Joy and Caitlin for being really help others to build drought resilience and contribute to their communities and their families. Thanks
so
everyone.
much.